after a number of delays, right? Twice, in fact, it was delayed last night. President Ramaphosa finally addressed the nation and announced changes to his cabinet, including, of course, now 2 new ministries. So let's talk about the economic impact of all of that and, of course, the announcement of Mr. Fix-It, our new electricity minister, who, of course, is Dr. Josienzo Ramakgopa. He comes into the job with a PhD in public affairs, a master's degree in business leadership and public administration, and he's also a civil engineer, eminently qualified. What is he up against? Azam Mhlanga is the economist and head of research at RMB Rand Merchant Bank, and he joins us now on the line. A pleasure to have you on the show, and thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me, Bongani, and good morning to the listeners.
Did the changes announced by the president yesterday indicate to you that he meant business?
Look, it's I think as far as the Minister of Electricity is concerned, that's the major one that we have been waiting for. Obviously, initially, it would have been good just to rationalize the 2 ministries, which is the DPE, Department of Public Enterprise, and the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, to make sure that they deliver on what they're supposed to. But that was not to be the case. We now have the Minister of Electricity, who is a capable individual, as you alluded to in your opening, well qualified, politically also a heavyweight that can be able to influence the developments at Eskom. But I think we can't for now say this is going to deliver. We have to wait and see, because there are a lot of political considerations that have made the situation to be what it is today. So until those are solved, we have to wait and see.
I mean, you will know from your work in the corporate world that ultimately what you want to do for critical positions like this, you want to, as you've just used the word, streamline operations. You want a clear devolution of responsibilities and power. We still now have the situation where Eskom ultimately is answerable to 3 chiefs, right? At public enterprises, the minister is the shareholder representative. We've got the minister of mineral resources and energy, who's got an influence on what happens with the utility. And now this minister of electricity, the incoming CEO, the permanent one, whoever he or she may be, who do they listen to?
Look, I think that's the difficulty, and this is something that we have seen with other functions in government. You can take the minister that is responsible for reducing red tape, which now sits in the presidency, and then we also have several others under Vulinjela functions that should be taken care of government departments that now sits in the presidency. So this follows the same modus operandi. Take Eskom out of DP and Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, put it under the presidency. And then the president says, in terms of Section 97 of the Constitution, he will be given certain powers and functions that should enable him to function properly and make sure that he reduces load shedding. I think we just have to wait for what sort of powers will this be taken out of DPE, will this be taken out of DMRE, and what sort of coordination will he do between Eskom, DPE, and DMRE. I think it might be complex, but let's just wait and see. We might just be surprised in terms of how he might navigate the difficult space that he finds himself in.
He, of course, comes in, does the Minister of Electricity, fresh of his responsibilities in the presidency, where he was responsible for, among other things, trying to attract investment here in South Africa. He's spoken about the crisis that we face with Eskom. More broadly speaking, you speak to international investors, you speak to people who are worried, concerned, interested in South Africa's direction. One of the stories that came out yesterday in the context of our recent grey listing was the idea that, in fact, the money that ended up in the president's furniture was never declared to SARS, even though the man who brought it into the country said he had. I mean, what does that say when you speak to international investors that we're talking about being concerned about illicit money flows? A foreigner walks into this country carrying bags of cash and somehow it ends up in the furniture of the number one citizen. How are people reading us at the moment?
Look, I think if you talk to international investors, as far as the grey listing is concerned, which touches on the point that you're mentioning alongside the state capture and the failure to implement the recommendations of the State Capture Commission quickly enough, they are concerned. I think it's a sentiment knock on South Africa as an investment destination, and which makes it difficult to attract new investment. But for those companies that already know South Africa as an investment destination that have operations in this country, there shouldn't be a big knock. But for new investors that are not familiar, they will have to ask a lot more questions than they ordinarily do, and they would have to take much more time to conclude transactions in the country than they would ordinarily do, which means it delays the investments that we so need in the country to boost economic growth.
Think about the opportunity costs. Azam Hlang, I appreciate your time. That's the economist at Rand Merchant Bank, also the head of research there.
Current events, developing stories,
tough questions.
Your voice making a difference.
This is Breakfast with Bongani Bingwa.